My name is Ailine, and I'm currently I'm in Christchurch at the moment. I'm Tongan, but I'm currently here in New Zealand. I grew up here in New Zealand, but I'm currently based in Christchurch at the moment. And I'm a school chaplain, so I'm a chaplain at Christchurch Adventist School, and it's a high school and primary school as well. So I'm ministering and just serving from new entrants all the way up to year 13s.
Now, Ailine, that is a unique role because chaplains that I've interviewed in the past have either just in high school or
Yeah.
just in primary school. Now, you have a hybrid role where you're doing both primary school and new entrants all the way through to graduating high school. Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you, I don't know where to start. Like, what do you do? Where do you start? Maybe that's a better question. Where do you start in terms of trying to minister to everyone?
Yeah. Well, that's probably the most common question that I do. I was like, how do you create programs, or how do you do things from such a very young age, and like you said, to like graduating year 13s and that kind of stuff. And so because like I came into this space, I was like, Lord, I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to obey. I'm just going to listen, and you just tell me what I have to do, what I need to do, and that kind of stuff. But the thing is, when I first started in this role, I didn't start by myself, which was really good, because I was like, I have no idea what the space is going to look like. But I had, and you probably know Pastor Lance Bolton. And so
Yes.
When he finished his role up in the North Island of New Zealand, he came down to South Island. And so, so he kind of mentored me and kind of journeyed with me through that first year at Christchurch Adventist School and stuff, because he's had years of experience on both high school, actually probably more high school, but just in terms of like chaplaincy world and stuff. And so from that first year, we kind of just nutted out what the year could look like and will look like, or how I wanted to look like. But I think it really helped me trying to navigate that space, because I had because a lot of those younger primary kids I kind of knew as well from either church or from the community, and then kids that I knew all the way throughout high school as well, that I also knew in the community and through church as well. I didn't know where to start either, but it was I love building relationships, and so that's where I started. I was like, I have no idea how to navigate this space, but I'm just going to get to know these kids first and kind of see where to, instead of creating things already and then assuming that they're going to enjoy it.
So in a structure like that, and again, I'm going to lean back into that question.
Yeah.
Who do you answer to? Is there like obviously at a normal school, there's like a head of secondary, head of primary. Do you talk to both, or is that your school? Is it just one person that oversees everything? Like,
because I mostly answer to the head of high schools. That's where a lot of the bulk mahi work that I do is in the high school. But I also do a lot of I try my best to do a lot of stuff in the primary school as well. And so I mostly answer and work alongside the head of high school, which is also the deputy principal as well. But anything primary related as well, it's the head of primary. So so weekly worships and studies or whatever. Anything in the primary space, I touch base with head of primary, but it comes back again, like any kind of big decision making I do in terms of both high school and primary. Then I go to head of high school, because she's also the deputy principal as well.
Yeah, I'm sure people who are watching are like, I don't know how this girl does it, but it is an amazing thing to be able to go between the two. And because you must have a certain skill set that you can, it's like having two bosses in a sense, like what's that like for you to have an open relationship with your head of schools? Because that's super important in terms of the success of your work, really, isn't it? Because if your head of schools are not supporting, or if I'll phrase it this, if they are supportive, then it makes your work a lot easier. How is your relationship with them, and how have you seen the benefits of a good relationship in the work that you have?
No, good question. I'm just like a lot of the work that I do, it's so much like from the first year up until I'm currently in my third year. And so looking back at every single year and every single program or every single program or event that's run, it's successful, obviously, because God is at the center of it all, but it's also successful because I'm not just doing it by myself. And so
Right.
when I do that, the head of primary and the head of high school are so supportive, and that's what's been really amazing for my journey, is that I came into a space where I was like, sweet, I know I've developed such an awesome relationship with head of primary and head of high school, that we've come to that point, way beyond that point, where like the open conversations, corridor, it's just open. And so they've created that space, which is it's actually much easier as well, because they've allowed me to be open with them and created that space. It was like, hey, if something's not going on, like, let's tweak it. How do we work around it?
Right.
I don't have to tiptoe around them, that kind of stuff. But but they're both great. They're both head of high school, are both women, whoop whoop.
Hey.
High school and primary, and just being able to just be able to go. And it also helps as well that when I go either to one of them, neither of them are also trying to overstep each other in terms of the
Right.
what I try and do as well.
That's
and it's
really healthy.
We're all just trying to work together to the benefit of our children.
Yeah. How do you go about creating a team then of helpers? Because you're saying obviously your head of schools are supportive, but how have you gone about getting a group of helpers? Like, what's your process, and who have you gotten to be on your team? Is it a mixture of students or staff, or is it just I'm interested to know that process, because I know some chaplains in schools do it alone, and sometimes it's by choice, but sometimes they're just it's just the way the cookie crumbles in terms of that particular school and their context. So what's your process of creating a team to serve both primary and high school?
It was one of the biggest challenges that I thought I would face when I first started. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm probably the only one that I know, or probably another that I know that's actually full-time chaplain. So previous chaplains have either been part-time, and so it's been really helpful that when I'm there full-time, I know the process and I know what's going on every day, and that's really helpful for when I create my team, because then I keep them in the loop of what's actually happening. And so the team is consisted of because with the head of high school, we look after the student leaders, so that's the prefects.
Oh, okay. So they're your automatic team.
Yeah. And so when it comes to kind of like big events, or so our Friday night programs that we have, about 6 of them throughout the year, called Revolution, which is Friday night vespers for the high school and wider community young people as well. Is that it's prefect led, so the prefect team. So I overlook it and guide our prefects as leader.
So prefects, in terms of, for those who are watching, it's a term in New Zealand used for like your school leaders or your school captains. It's your core leadership team, often led by graduating year students, right? They're those who are graduating, or the senior leaders. Or do you have again, because it's a hybrid role, do you have a mix? You have those who are graduating, and then a few of the other year levels. How does it work for you?
The bulk of it is the graduating group, so like our school captain, school leaders, and stuff. But what I've tried to create from the very get-go is not only just using them, but also tapping into the year group before, in terms of just in terms of that, just that mentoring aspect. Like, these guys are obviously going to be leaving, but then how do we continue that momentum of leadership and leading? Like, it doesn't just start and end in that graduating year group. It's like tapping into the year groups, the younger year groups, but also kind of like pinpointing, it's like seeing the potential in the younger year groups and stuff. Is like, hey, who are you going to pinpoint and be like, sweet, I'm going to get that, I'm going to get her or he to involved in this, so that we can help grow him or her into this leadership group. So, but the bulk of it is our year 13s, and because I have so many siblings and sisters and stuff, I also get to write them in as well. So that's of course. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing for them, but it's a very good thing for me.
It's by default. So if you can correct me, do you get alumni coming back as well? Is that part of your mentoring process, like people who have graduated but are still around? Do you get them involved as well? Because that'll be a unique sort of mentoring process and leadership as well, because often when people leave school, they're like, see you later, I'm out of here. But it
Yeah.
sounds, I don't know, am I correct?
Yeah.
Or
Yes and no-ish in a way. Christchurch Adventist was such a small school, and so when you try,
okay.
like when you have like a, you know,
What's
the
what's
numbers,
small?
small is like from
How many?
primary and high school as a whole is about 270, and so that's so
Okay.
more primary kids than high school.
Right.
And so
Okay.
in
So that is small.
yes, in the last kind of like 2 years, so the last 2 years, the graduating class has ranged from 13 to 20 kids.
Right.
And that's just
Very
one
intimate.
class compared to when I did high school in Australia, where there was like 7 classes of year 9 and year 13.
Yeah.
But it's just
You have a
one class.
cohort of about 200 in
Yes.
1 year level.
Yeah, definitely. But in terms of like alumni coming back, yes, in a way, because when we do events, they always like, even though it's not their role anymore to kind of help out Chaplain, help run an event, there's always a, what can I do to help? Like, tell me what I need to do, and that kind of stuff. But because it's been small year groups, small graduating year groups, a lot of them do move away, either for work or study, but a good bulk of them, good pocket of them do stay behind, and it's about just ensuring, creating that space that when they leave high school that they are allowed to come back as well.
Right. I'm gonna run it back to what I asked I think earlier, maybe a bit more clarity around that question. Like, where do you start in terms of the things that you do in school? Like, do you put up a calendar and go mark the dots? How do you program your year so that you can get, but like, I guess what I'm really saying, do you duplicate things for high school and primary school? Do you tweak it, or do you do completely separate thing? Like, I'm just so interested to know, because it's such a hybrid role. Like, because I guess I'm speaking from, I'm only in high school, so I only know how to just do one size sort of fits all for everyone, really. But you're talking about 2 different demographics.
It's I do a lot of the planning. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this here, do that here. I'm gonna do this here and here. And so when everything is on the calendar, I'm like, oh shucks, like this is so chock-a-block. There's so many things happening. Like, where do I find the time to like create new content, or do I create new content?
Give us an example of give an example of an event that you do that you use both, that you can go, well, actually I can duplicate exactly that for I can do the same for high school and maybe the same for so what's an example of that in your role?
An example, actually, perfect example is our weekly chapels. So so you'd be in high school, and so you'll be creating this chapel for just high school, and so
and that consists of songs and
worship, getting a
games
speaker, getting the kids to lead in worship, welcome, icebreakers, connectors, all that kind of stuff. And so that's probably the perfect example where I'm kind of like, okay, each week we have the same theme. So primary and high school have the same theme, and then in high school we have the chapel, and then we have primary, and so that's where I find myself duplicating a lot of stuff. I'm like, actually, these, like, not to reinvent the wheel, like this will be just perfect if we just tweak it, and it works every time, because what is different between the two, I don't always get the same speaker for both, so I'm always getting different speakers for both of them.
And so the songs that you say, like for example, there's singing and stuff in the chapels. Do the same group of people, like, are you using the same band, like, or are you using a different band, or different people are involved, or
the good thing is that the primary classes actually look after their own chapels. So the primary classes, so I do the programs. I'm like, okay, sweet, week 1, 2, and 3, there's room 4, 5, 6, year 8s are doing it as well. The good thing is that primary actually lead out their own worships, but in terms of like the theme, like if I'm speaking, so I try and aim to speak at least once a term for primary and high school, and then I do that invites for the speakers. But the primary school does a lot of primary school's worship songs. Actually love it when they get to do the same songs that high school do, even though they're not in the same chapel. We used to have combined chapels, but because the school has expanded, we don't have the space to hold any or the whole school in it, because that would be helpful for me sometimes. Like, sweet, I can only have to prepare for one chapel. But it's really exciting watching them lead out in their own chapels, but also primary wanting to do the same songs as high school, because they love the way they worship. And so especially leading out in worship as well. But high school and primary, the dynamics in the chapels are so different. But but I'm learning every day and like how we do that. But that's probably where I see a lot of the duplication in terms of like theme.
Yeah, right. You must have a ton of energy, because I'm just trying to think, man, it'd be very, very interesting to try and to navigate between the two hats or the two profiles. I want to shift into a different gear. So how long have you been a chaplain for at that particular school? And how long have you been a chaplain for, like, just been a chaplain?
Yeah. I started chaplaincy. I started being a chaplain at Christchurch Adventist School at the beginning of 2019, and so I just finished uni. So my background, I'm a social worker by trade, so that's my background as well as coming into there. So I'm currently in my third year at Christchurch Adventist School as sport chaplain, and so graduating, coming in at the beginning of 2019 with a social work experience. It's been,
I'm gonna ask you about that. Like, what made you study social work? Because it is a unique perspective to bring into chaplaincy, and I'm sure you didn't. Or maybe I could be corrected. You didn't study social work to get into chaplaincy. Again, side note, I know Ailina's story, but I'm trying to make a case in point here. What made you want to study social work first?
Honestly, like when I first found out about the profession of social work, I was like, man, I love it. I love the way these people help people. And out of all the professions that I know that help people, doctors, nurses, policemen and stuff like that, I don't know why social work was like just the profession. I was like, you know what, this is what I wanted to go in it. And a lot of the reason why social work was a profession that I decided that I will go into was literally just the people around me, but most importantly, my mum and dad, and watching them serve, watching them help those who are unfortunate, and just being able to see them help those who weren't able to help themselves. I don't know why social work, but social work just because of my passion for young people, as well as I grew, was like, this is the area that I that I see myself in, and that I want to be in.
Yeah, so you graduated from social work, but in that degree, were you doing practical placements in schools, or where were you doing your practical placements that you're getting this experience?
So throughout my 4 years of study of the social work, I was with an organization called Oranga Tamariki. So it's kind of it's like the child, youth and family and stuff. And so from there, I moved into community work, NGOs, and then towards the last final year of my social work degree, I was in the correction space. And so I was working.
Wow.
I was working doing some placement in the correction space. And then even towards that last final year of high school, where I learned a lot of the skills with young people in terms of high school age and primary. I still am. So I'm full-time chaplain, but in the weekends, I also work as a casual residential youth worker with at-risk youth at an enclosed facility. It's just behind one of our local correction centres here in Christchurch. So that's where
I'm interested to know more about, and I'm sure some of our listeners are, about your work in a correctional facility. So this is a prison for young people. If people are trying to read between the lines, like, what is a correctional facility? It's a prison. It's a juvenile prison. What was your experience like? Obviously, you don't have to disclose names and things like that, or cases specifically, but what was some of the learnings or your experiences in there about how you can relate to young people?
it was so different. Like I mentioned, the final year I was at an adult corrections facility,
Oh, wow.
and then I was an adult, and so I'm not there I don't do any work there anymore, but I'm still doing work with the teens. So these are 13 to 17 year old males who just at risk, and so a lot of the skills that I've gained for them, and so that like when I'm also at Christchurch Adventist School is like these young people just need to be heard. Like these young people
Wow.
just need to be heard. We just need to hear their story.
A lot of listening skills.
So so a lot of that listening. So especially like in the primary school, oh my gosh, like facilitation skills, just sitting there and be able to listen. It's like, okay, so how did that actually make you feel when she or he said that? And so a lot of that skills actually was learned when I was in the correction space, with group facilitation, discussions, and learning about the different approaches of how we approach different situations. And that's probably one of the biggest skills that's been common and regular, consistent from social work, from studying social work into the correction space, into the youth facilities, even in present now in the high school, in primary.
It amazes me that you have the capacity to hold space in both school. If anyone's listening, it's like, how does she do it with all this hybrid role? But then you still make time in the weekend to work at this place, a separate facility that you're still mentoring and shaping a lot of these young people, these at-risk people, right? Where does that come from? Actually, I've answered my own question because you said it sort of stems from your parents, but why not just leave it at the school and go, oh, that's it, I'm done. Let me take the weekend to recover. Why the passion to still go, hey, I still have more to give?
Yeah, I honestly can't tell you there's so many reasons. And I mentioned before, like just my passion for young people, especially and what close to my heart is especially our Indigenous young people, especially so as a Pacific young woman, and also our Indigenous people of Aotearoa New Zealand, our Māori young people. It's just my heart for them, just stretches beyond what I can do, because I'm like, man, I'm not going to stop until I can help as many people as I know as I can help.
Wow.
So why not just at the high school? Because there's so many more young people there who don't have the space to be in a high school that still deserves just the space, if they were in that space of high school. There's so many more young people just need to be heard, and that's what I'm here for, just the listening, just being able to hear their story, and literally just hear their story, and understand where they're actually coming from.
Ailine, I'm just inspired by your work capacity. It is amazing. And again, and I don't want it to be showboaty, because it's not, but you also have a responsibility in your own immediate family.
Yes.
Can you share again? So I'm only just sharing it because I know you, and you come from humble beginnings, but you tell us about your living situation and some of the responsibilities that you have even at home.
No. So I'm the oldest of 7, and so at the moment where I'm currently based is in Christchurch, but where I live at the moment is in Rolleston, and so my parents built out here a couple of years ago, but my parents are so dad's a minister, a pastor, and so our living situation is a little bit different to most families that I probably will know. Mum and dad actually live about an hour and a half away from us, so which is in a small town called Timaru. And so they've been serving there for the last 2 years. And so another hat added on to the many different things that I have passion for is, I don't know if it's passion for my siblings, no. But
they should be in a juvenile. No, I'm only kidding.
So the different hat that apart from all the mahi work out there, so I it's just me and my siblings at home. And the fortunate thing is that both my little brother and sister, who are still in high school, actually go to Christchurch Adventist School. So that's awesome. same space as us as well. But yeah, so mum and dad don't live with us anymore. They're serving in another town. But yeah, we travel to and see them. But most times it's such a busy schedule on our end as well with my role at church visits and siblings being a part of different church services and stuff. So yeah, it looks a little bit different. So in this household, it's just it's the mum hat. It's the mum hat.
Yes.
Older sister plus also a chaplain for my siblings as well, which is a whole different ball game as well.
Can I ask how old you are, Ailine? Is that okay to share? Because I'm just
It's because it's you. I'm 25.
You are 25, and you are obviously an older sibling to your siblings, but you're more also like a parent. You're taking on this hybrid role at a school, and you do this extra stuff on the weekend, which is still serve the community. I don't know of many people who work as hard as you, but I think what I am really inspired by, because it's not hard because you have a passion for it, and that's very visible and evident. And so I just want to applaud you and applaud any chaplains who are out there who are doing their best to impact the world. And that's what I love about you. And for those who are wondering, this is probably the part where I say, how do I know you? There was a stint where I lived in Christchurch, and I was working in the youth scene in terms of young people, and I happened to do a lot of stuff with Ailine. She was one of my young people, and then also had the privilege of having her on my team. So imagine me then having Ailine on the team. I was like, Ailine, this is what I need from you. So it has been awesome just to see you grow into this amazing leader. And I know you have so much more to give, but because you come from humble beginnings, but also humble on how you allow God to use you, right? It's such a powerful way. Ailine, I have one more question. If you were to encourage our chaplains out there in schools who may be thinking, I have so much to do and not enough time to do it, and often feeling, I shouldn't say often feeling flat, but you hit those walls sometimes where you're like, I don't know if I can do this. What would be your word of encouragement to maybe the younger generation of chaplains? Because some are going, I don't know if chaplaincy for me, because Ailine does a lot. But I know that there are willing young chaplains, because you guys are the future. You are the future right now. But what would you say to them?
One of the first things I probably would say then, like when I first came into the roles, I was like, Lord, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to just trust your leading. And so it's probably the first thing that I would encourage them is to trust God's leading. Is that when we lead and when we take care of the steering wheel, we want to take the direction, and it may not be the direction that's actually intended for us, but it's just to let God lead. And one of the things that I've been saying to myself actually probably over the last year is that, come on, young people and just anybody out there, is that I didn't come this far to stay this far. So letting God take me as far as he can, and just being able to say yes, and trust that God's got you, and surround yourself with people who will continue to uplift and empower you.
So good. Ailine, thank you so much for your time. I know because of the time difference, you're probably getting a bit sleepy-eyed now, but I appreciate your time. I appreciate your wisdom for being doing the role that you're in, and just the capacity that you have to hold this sacred space for people. And at your age, I really am inspired. So I definitely will know that if I run out of energy, I will call you and tell you to come and work for me one day. But in saying that, thank you so much. And
thank you so much for having me, bro.
Hey, all good. We will catch up once the borders open.
100%.
All right. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.